It has come to the end of the year, so what better time to reflect over my favourite reads, my least favourite reads, and everything in between. I've had a pretty good year of reading, in fact probably my best year yet. I've read 66 books, which is by far the most I've ever read in a year, and most of those books were pretty good. There's only a handful that I would say were bad reads that I didn't really enjoy at all, and there were a good amount of excellent reads, ones that maybe have even transformed the way that I look at books. But even in that middle section there, most of them were around the 4-star mark, so all in all, a really good year. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about my 5 favourite reads of the year, and I do have another video on my channel talking about my 5 least favourite reads of the year. If you're interested in that, go and watch that after watching this one. But it wouldn't be a top 5 list without a few honourable mentions, so I'm going to start with 3 books that didn't quite make it into my top 5, but I want to just highlight them in this video so other people can go and check them out. The first of which is The Ascendants by Jazza Brooks. Now, Jazza Brooks is a YouTuber who generally does crafty sort of content. He creates like big craft models, and back in the day he used to teach how to draw as well. So he's sort of in the creative sphere, but this is his first time actually writing a book. And every month I try to read an independent author to give a little bit of a spotlight on them, and I chose to do Jazza Brooks a few months ago, and I was expecting it to maybe be like a 2.5 3-star sort of read for a debut novel and someone that's not really in the sphere of writing. I wasn't expecting too much, so I was extremely surprised that it was actually a really great sci-fi read. The book is about a mining colony on a planet, and there is an outbreak of alien-like creatures. It is in a way very similar to the Alien films. There's a lot of horror elements and sort of a stranded vibe. But as well as this outbreak, the saviours turn up to save them, but it's not as straightforward as that, and there's another element on top that just makes it more enjoyable. So although that didn't make it on my top 5, if it sounds of interest to you, go and check it out and support an independent author. The next honourable mention is The Grave Empire by Richard Swan. This is my first time reading Richard Swan. I didn't read the trilogy that is before The Grave Empire, so I didn't know what to expect, but I did enjoy it quite a lot. He seems to be very good at making a gritty, sort of horror-esque atmosphere in his writing, and the world building in it is really great. I did feel like some of the characters fell a little bit flat for me, but that is just personal opinion. But what he did with the world building and the plot made up for that lack of character growth that I was looking for. And there's some really interesting ideas here around the magic, around the plot, around what's happening in the world. This is another one that has horror elements, but is a lot more fantasy, and I would say is a lot more plot driven and not sort of jump scary in a way. And this has a lot of politics in it as well, so if you want something that's in the fantasy genre, has a bit of politics, has a little bit of horror, and a really interesting plot, go and check it out. And the last honourable mention is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This one took me completely by surprise because I picked it up knowing absolutely nothing about it, and it was just fast-paced, gripping fun. This is also a different kind of read to what I normally would read because it's based on Earth in a present day sort of environment with a little bit of advanced technology, whereas I usually read other planets, completely new fantasy worlds, so I probably wouldn't have picked this up if I actually knew what it was about. But I picked it up blind, and I'm really glad I did. There's a lot of twists and turns that I didn't have a clue were coming because I didn't know what to expect from the book. And I do think the way I did it might be the best way to do it, completely blind. So I don't want to give you any sort of information about the plot or anything. All I'll say is if you like films like Inception or Memento, this is going to be a good book for you. Okay, so now we've got the honourable mentions out of the way. Let's start with my 5th favourite read of the year, which is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This year was sort of the year of Cosmere for me. I read the majority of the Cosmere books this year. I started it at the end of last year and read the majority in this year. But Warbreaker really was the one that stood out. I just found as I was reading it, there was just layer upon layer of interesting stuff that just kept being put into the story. He would just introduce something into the book and I'd be like, oh, that's a really cool idea. And then a chapter later, there'll be another cool idea added and another one. And I just really enjoyed the journey through that. The plot is based around 2 different kingdoms, one of which has a daughter which is going to marry the ruler of the other kingdom, which is quite a familiar storyline. storyline. But the kingdom she's going to get married into, the rulers of that are actually gods that walk among the earth. So that adds a nice little twist to it. The magic system is obviously really unique, being from Brandon Sanderson. You can breathe out breath into inanimate objects, and then they will be able to do what you command. And the more breaths you have, the more powerful that can be, and you can get breaths from other people, sometimes maybe forced, sometimes not forced. And as I said, there's a lot of these different ideas and different plots that go into this book that made it really enjoyable for me. Next up, the fourth most enjoyable book for me was The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie. This year I also read all 9 of the Joe Abercrombie books in the First Law universe, and this one, which is the finale, was definitely the most enjoyable for me. I think out of all of the full series that I've completed so far, this one seemed to have the best well-rounded ending to a series. Joe Abercrombie is known for his character work, and a lot of the characters had good growth throughout the series, and I think ended in a very good way, and sometimes I didn't see how the ending would come. There's also a pretty big twist near the end, which was enjoyable. I didn't see it coming at all, so it completely blindsided me and was really shocking. And although I did pretty much enjoy all 9 of the books, I do think that it got better as it went along, and the final trilogy, which ends with The Wisdom of Crowds, was just a really good series. I can't really say anything about the plot of this book because it is the end of a series and obviously don't want to spoil anything, but there's quite a lot of point of view characters, some of which were more interesting than others for me. But if you like a vast world, multiple point of view characters, really good character world, and an interesting sort of politic storyline, then this might be a good series for you. I do think you really benefit from reading all 9 rather than starting with this final trilogy, but if you struggle to get through the first trilogy, maybe you won't enjoy this one as much. My third favourite read of the year was Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. If you had told me at the beginning of the year I'd be putting a slow-paced, beautiful prose sort of story on my top 5 list, I would have told you were wrong, but here we are. The Assassin's Apprentice taught me that I can enjoy a slower-paced, more descriptive, different kind of prose than I was used to. And that started with The Assassin's Apprentice. I completed that entire trilogy, the Farseer trilogy, and The Assassin's Apprentice I still think is my favourite book of the trilogy, although I do like the end book as well. This follows a man called Fitz, who is a bastard to a prince and finds his way back into the political royal court and is trained as an assassin to service his king. But it's nothing really like any other assassin story that I've read in the past. It's a lot more slow-paced, a lot more thoughtful behind what he is doing. And even in this first book, you can see that this world is massive and loads of different things are coming into play. But this first book is solely focused on Fitz and his story and how he is sort of an outcast in this society and having to do these assassiny things. There's some really interesting side characters as well, and although the books do get bigger as the series goes on, this first book isn't so big, so you can give it a go and see if it's your kind of thing. My second favourite read of the year is The Inevitable Ruin by Matt Dinnerman. This is the most recent release in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, and as that series has gone on, I've just loved it more. I actually nearly didn't continue the series after the first book. I read the first book and I was like, oh yeah, that was a bit of fun, but we'll go and read some other bits. And then I had a really long drive and I was looking for an audiobook to listen to, and I knew people had been talking about how great the audiobooks are for the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, so I listened to the second book and absolutely fell in love with it as an audiobook. And then since then, I've continued on to the most recent one, which is The Inevitable Ruin. The series as a whole, you are following a guy called Carl who ends up in a multi-level dungeon like you'll find in a video game because Earth has been invaded by aliens and they have essentially forced the population into this dungeon, and you have to fight your way through 18 levels, I believe it is. And the books have a lot of humour, a lot of video game-esque elements, but as the series goes on, you get to learn a lot more about the universe, the people that are running this dungeon, and there's some infiltration, and you can see that the direction it's going is a lot more larger than just this dungeon that it starts in. I think out of every series that I've continued, Dungeon Crawler Carl has been the one I've always been most excited to get back into when I've had a little break from it, which is why I thought it makes sense for me to put a Dungeon Crawler Carl book on this list. And when I was thinking about it, the latest one is definitely my favourite because of how much wider in the universe it's gone. So if that sounds of interest to you, go and check out the first book, but don't take that for what the rest of the series is going to be like. If you're just sort of like, oh yeah, that was a bit fun, like I was, give the second book a try, and then if that draws you in like it did me, you'll probably love the rest of the series. And then drum roll please for the favourite read of the year, which is Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson. This is the first book of the Malazan series and the only one I've actually read so far. I'm going to be trying to read pretty much the whole series next year in 2026, but this is book one, and a lot of people talk as if this is the weakest, which just makes me even more excited to get into the rest of the series. As you may have noticed by the other books that are on this list, I like it when a series gets to the point where it's epic in proportion, it's going across continents or across worlds, and it is just huge. What I found with The Garden of the Moon, that is just the starting point. You are thrown into a story which already has a lot of rich history, lots of moving parts, and lots of politics is going on. And I just seemed to enjoy the way that you are starting there. You don't have the slow progression like you do in like Stormlight Archives or the Assassin's Apprentice series. You're just thrown straight into this and you just have to learn as you go along, which I completely understand is not going to be other people's flavour. That is just the type of story I enjoy. It also has some really interesting characters that I'm looking forward to see how they continue. And because you're starting with this epic proportion from the get-go, there's gods involved, there's creatures that are insane, and just a lot is going on, and I enjoyed following that progress. This book's made me really excited to get into the Malazan series next year, so if you have read all of the books, let me know what your favourite is down in the comments and which one I should look forward to the most. So there you have it, there's my 5 favourite books of the year and a few honourable mentions as well. If you want to know my 5 least favourite reads of the year, watch this video just here.